It was the kind of afternoon that felt like it belonged in a painting. The clouds were heavy, soft and low, rolling across the sky like woolly blankets. And the rain had been falling since morning, sometimes in gentle mist, sometimes in steady curtains, occasionally in a sudden burst. It tapped against windows like eager fingers asking to be let in. In the quiet little town of Willowmere, people didn't rush on days like this. They accepted the rhythm of the weather, pulled on their warm sweaters, and lit lamps a little earlier than usual. The streets were shiny with puddles, and the air carried that clean. Comforting scent of wet earth, damp leaves, and the faint sweetness of blooming flowers bending under the drizzle. At the very heart of Willowmere, nestled between a bookshop with ivy climbing its bricks and a flower store where the petals seemed to glow even on cloudy days, stood a bakery. Its sign swayed gently in the rain-stirred breeze. The Copper Kettle Bakery. A bakery was no ordinary place. Some said its ovens held magic. Others insisted it was simply the kindness of its baker that made everything taste so different, so warm, so needed. But everyone agreed on one thing: stepping inside the Copper Kettle. Bakery on a rainy day was like stepping into another world, one woven of comfort, safety, and quiet delight. The front windows were misty, but if you looked closely, you could just make out the golden glow inside, where cakes, breads, and pies rested proudly on their stands. The door, painted a deep green, was a little creaky when it opened, but the sound had become a familiar welcome, like a small tune at the start of a favorite song. And today, inside, the bakery felt cozier than ever. The baker, an elderly man named Mr. Alcott, was arranging freshly baked scones on a tray. His apron was dusted with flour, his hands steady, though slow with age. He hummed as he worked soft tunes no one quite recognized, but everyone found soothing, if the melodies themselves had been kneaded into the dough. At the corner table sat a girl named Clara. She had brought a notebook, though she hadn't written a single word yet. She loved to come here on rainy afternoons, ordering a mug of hot cocoa so thick it seemed like melted chocolate, and then letting her mind drift while she listened to the rain outside and the quiet clinking of cups inside. Beside the window, two children pressed their noses against the glass, watching the raindrops race each other down. Their mother laughed softly, sipping her tea, while Mr. Alcott promised the children a small shortbread biscuit each if they could guess which raindrop would reach the bottom first. The whole bakery smelled of cinnamon and sugar, of warm bread and melting butter, and above all, of something even more comforting belonging. And though the world outside was gray and wet, inside the Copper Kettle Bakery, the world was golden. But today, this rainy day at the bakery was about to become even more extraordinary. For not many people knew, except perhaps the baker himself, that the bakery carried a secret. A gentle, wonderful secret that only revealed itself when the weather turned especially rainy, when the clouds grew especially thick, and when the air outside became especially quiet. It was on such days that the bakery's magic began to stir. The bell above the bakery door chimed merrily as a tall man entered, shaking off the raindrops from his umbrella. He leaned it against the stand and removed his wet coat, exposing a beautifully hand-knit scarf. "Good afternoon, Mr. Alcott," he greeted in a deep, calm voice. My head smiled, eyeing the golden loaf of bread cooling on the counter, its glossy crust cracking slightly. Clara looked up from her blank notebook, delighted by Henry's visits. The town's clockmaker had a quiet, thoughtful demeanor that seemed to slow time around him, creating a comfortable atmosphere. Outside, the rain intensified, tapping rhythmically against the window. The two children nearby squealed at a clap of thunder, as if it added to their game. Their mother watched with a smile, thankful for Mr. Alcott's bakery as a safe haven. Suddenly, the lights inside flickered softly, not ominously, but as if they responded to an unseen force. The warm golden light wrapped around everyone, creating an inviting ambience. Clara noticed the shimmer on her notebook pages, thinking she saw a ray of sunlight, but upon touching it, found only smooth, dry paper. Henry felt a peculiar ticking from his watch time, seemed to move slower, more intentional, as if the bakery had its own rhythm. The children gazed wide-eyed at the window. "Look," one whispered, pointing out that the raindrops on the glass had stopped moving, suspended like sparkling beads. It felt as if the bakery had transformed. Mr. Alcott appeared unfazed. With a calm smile, he remarked, "It seems the storm has chosen us today." The others exchanged confused glances. "What do you mean?" Clara asked softly, wanting to preserve the enchanting atmosphere. Mr. Alcott leaned against the counter, dusting his floury hands, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. "There are days when the rain doesn't just fall, it listens, pays attention to hearts, wishes, and worries. When it listens closely enough, it gathers people here into this room. This warm fan slows time just a bit, allowing us to notice what we might otherwise overlook." Henry reclined, his watch ticking oddly in his hand. Clara stared at her glowing notebook, while the children remained captivated by the still raindrops. Quiet enveloped them, the rain muted outside, yet glistening on the glass. Inside, the bakery radiated warmth like a beacon in the dimness. Mr. Alcott then lifted the kettle, pouring hot cocoa into mugs that filled the air with a rich aroma. If the storm has chosen us, we should enjoy it. There's always a reason, even if it takes time to understand. Clara cradled her warm mug, feeling its heat fill her hands. She opened her notebook again to find words appearing on the page. Beautifully written without her having written a single one, they read. "Every storm carries a story." Her heart raced as she glanced at Mr. Alcott, who smiled knowingly, as if to affirm that her notebook had been destined for this moment. The bakery had always felt warm and cozy, but now it thrummed with life, an energy all its own. Clara's fingers trembled slightly as she traced the mysterious words that had appeared in her notebook. "Every storm carries a story." She whispered the line under her breath. The sound was soft, almost swallowed by the warmth of the bakery, but somehow everyone seemed to hear it. Henry looked up from his watch. The children stopped staring at the frozen raindrops, and even the mother set down her teacup, her eyes curious. Mr. Alcott, however, simply nodded. "Exactly," he said gently, as though Clara had reminded him of something he already knew. "You see," he continued, "this bakery isn't just a place for bread and cakes. It's a place where stories come to rest. Sometimes they drift in with the people who arrive here. Sometimes they ride in on the rain itself. And on certain days, like today, the walls, the lamps, even the kettles, know it's time to listen." The fire crackled, sending a small spark upward. The smell of cinnamon buns grew richer as the heat rose from the oven. Henry leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. "And what happens?" he asked softly, "when the storm gathers a story?" Mr. Alcott smiled, the kind of smile that held secrets like treasures. Then he said, "The story begins to tell itself." At that moment, Clara's notebook pages rustled, though no breeze had touched them. The words began to spread, line after line, filling the blank paper with gentle looping script. Clara's eyes widened as sentences formed, describing things she hadn't seen but could somehow imagine clearly. The children crept closer, leaning against the table, their eyes glowing with excitement. One of them whispered, "It's writing a fairy tale." And indeed it was. The words spoke of another rainy night, long ago, when a traveler had wandered into Willowmere. The traveler had no name written on the page, just a stranger with weary eyes and muddy boots. He had stepped into the bakery when it was little more than a small stone room with a single oven and a wooden bench. And, the story said, he had carried with him a box, a small wooden box that he never opened, though the sound of soft ticking came from within. Clara turned the page, her heart thudding with quiet wonder. The letters continued to curl across the parchment. The stranger placed the box upon the counter, bought a loaf of bread, and whispered to the baker, "Keep it safe until the rain learns my name." Then he left, and no one ever saw him again. The fire gave a low pop, as though echoing the mystery. Henry's brow furrowed, his thumb brushing over the face of his pocket watch. "A box that ticks," he murmured. "That sounds like he stopped himself." Clara's wide eyes met his, waiting for him to finish. But Henry only shook his head. Mr. Alcott, however, chuckled quietly. "Oh yes, the stranger's box," he said. "I remember that tale. My grandfather was the one who received it. He never opened it either." The room fell into a hushed silence. Outside, the raindrops still shimmered, unmoving, as though the storm itself was listening. "Where is it now?" Clara asked. Her voice was barely louder than the crackle of the fire. The baker glanced toward the back room, the corners of his mouth curving in a small smile. "Safe," he said. "Safe and waiting. Perhaps waiting for a day just like this." The children gasped, clutching each other's hands. Henry leaned further back in his chair, his thoughtful gaze drifting toward the rain-streaked glass. Clara, notebook still glowing faintly under her fingertips, felt as though the entire bakery were holding its breath. The lamps flickered once more, steadier now, as though encouraging them. The storm had gathered them here for a reason. Perhaps Mr. Alcott finally straightened his apron and gestured toward the back room. "Well," he said, his voice gentle but certain, "if we are to spend the afternoon sheltered in magic, we may as well see what the rain has brought us." He motioned for Clara, Henry, the children, and their mother to follow. Together they left the glow of the main room and stepped into the quieter, shadowy warmth of the bakery storeroom. There, beneath shelves of flour, jars of honey, and baskets of spices, stood a small chest made of dark wood. Its surface was worn smooth with age, its corners bound in iron, and from inside, barely audible beneath the patter of distant thunder, came a sound. Tick, tock, tick, tock. The stranger's box. The group stood silently in the storeroom, the only sound the faint ticking from the wooden chest. It was not the hurried ticking of a pocket watch, nor the loud clanging of a clock tower. It was steady, patient, almost like a heartbeat. Clara felt her notebook grow warm in her hands, though she hadn't opened it. The words inside seemed to whisper against the paper, urging her closer. Henry, too, seemed caught by the sound. His clockmaker's ears tilted to it instinctively, as though it spoke a language only he could truly understand. "Mr. Alcott," Henry said softly, "why have you kept it here all these years?" The baker folded his flour-dusted arms, leaning against the shelves. His expression was thoughtful but calm. "Because the rain asked me to," he replied. and because there are some things that cannot be rushed. My grandfather said the box would choose its moment, and that when the time was right, those who needed it would be gathered by the storm. The children's mother gave a nervous laugh, though it was gentle. It almost sounds like a fairy tale, she said, her voice lowering as though afraid to disturb the stillness. Perhaps it is, Mr. Alcott murmured. Or perhaps fairy tales are just truths we only remember when the rain reminds us. The children crept closer, wide-eyed. One of them whispered, "Can we open it?" The ticking seemed to grow louder in answer, echoing faintly in the room. Clara felt her heart beat in rhythm with it, slow and steady. She looked at Henry. He had slipped his own pocket watch from his vest and held it in his palm. Its hands were moving strangely against lower, bending, as though they wanted to follow the rhythm of the chest. Henry's brow furrowed. "It's not just a box," he said quietly. "It's a keeper. Something designed to hold, not to count." Clara tilted her head. "Hold what?" But before Henry could answer, Clara's notebook flipped open in her arms. The pages fluttered as though caught in an invisible breeze, then still. On the open sheet, a new sentence appeared in the familiar looping script. "Inside lies a moment that was never meant to end." Clara read it aloud. Her voice trembled, but the words filled the room with a strange weight. Mr. Alcott nodded slowly, as though the message had confirmed what he already knew. "Yes," he said softly. "That was always the story. The stranger came here carrying something he could not bear to lose a moment, too precious to let slip into time. And so he locked it away in this box that ticks like a heart. He asked the storm to keep it safe, and the storm, in its patience, chose this bakery." The room was silent, except for the ticking. The children pressed close to their mother. Clara stared at the glowing words in her notebook, while Henry set his watch down on the wooden chest. The two rhythms aligned, the slow, deliberate beat of the box and the hesitant ticking of Henry's watch. And then the box clicked. It was not loud, not startling, just a gentle sound, like the soft lift of a latch. The iron corners shimmered faintly, as though touched by light from nowhere. Mr. Alcott glanced at Clara. "It seems," he said gently, "that it wants you to open it." Clara's throat felt dry. She looked at the others, but their faces were filled not with fear, but with quiet wonder. Even the children's wide eyes held more excitement than worry. Carefully, she knelt before the chest. The ticking grew louder now, wrapping around her like a lullaby. She placed her hand on the lid, the wood warm beneath her fingers, and with a slow, steady breath, she lifted it. The lid rose without a sound. Inside there was no clutter, no pile of objects only. A small glass sphere resting on a cushion of velvet. The sphere glowed faintly, silver and blue, like moonlight trapped in crystal. And within the sphere, something moved. Clara gasped softly. It was not gears or springs, not jewels or coins. It was a scene, a living moment, captured perfectly inside. A rainy street lit by lamplight. A man in a dark coat standing beneath an umbrella, and beside him a woman laughing, her hand reaching for his. The raindrops hung around them like jewels, frozen in midair, their joy sealed in forever. The sphere pulsed once, like a heartbeat. Then again, the children whispered in awe. Henry's watch had stopped ticking entirely, as though bowing to the greater rhythm of the sphere. Mr. Alcott's eyes softened, filled with a quiet tenderness. Clara lifted the sphere gently. It felt both weightless and heavy at once, like holding a dream that longed to be remembered. Her notebook glowed, and new words spilled across the page. Every storm carries a story. Some storms carry love too great for time to keep. Clara held the glowing sphere carefully, her hands cradling it as though it were the most delicate thing she had ever touched. The storm outside remained utterly still, every raindrop frozen on the glass like 1,000 tiny gems. Inside the bakery, the air felt hushed, reverent, as though even the fire dared not crackle too loudly. Henry leaned closer, his eyes reflecting the silvery blue glow. "It's not just a memory," he whispered. "It's alive, that moment. It's still happening even now." The children pressed close to their mother, who wrapped an arm around them, though her gaze was fixed on the sphere. Her lips parted in awe. "But how can that be?" she murmured. Mr. Alcott rested one hand on the wooden chest and spoke in his gentle, unhurried voice. "Some moments," he said, "are too powerful to pass. They anchor themselves, refusing to fade. Perhaps this stranger, this man who came to my grandfather, could not bear the thought of losing his happiest instant. And so, with help from the storm, he sealed it away." The sphere pulsed again, sending ripples of silvery light across Clara's palms. She felt her heart beat slower, calmer, as though the rhythm of the moment inside was weaving into her own. Her notebook trembled against her arm. More words unfurled across the page in that elegant, unseen hand. When love becomes light, time cannot hold it. The rain will guard it until others are ready to remember. Clara read it aloud, her voice low but steady. The room was silent for a long time. Henry's watch had not restarted. The only sound was the sphere's heartbeat-like thrum, soft and steady. Finally, Henry spoke. "If this moment was sealed away, what happens if we let it free?" The question hung in the warm air, heavier than the rain clouds outside. The children gasped softly, but Clara's eyes widened in understanding. She had seen the way the notebook revealed truths, the way the storm slowed the world so gently. She whispered, almost to herself, "Maybe the storm brought us here to decide." Mr. Alcott nodded slowly. "Perhaps," he said. "Storms have always been wiser than we are." Clara gazed into the sphere again. The couple inside still laughed together, still lingered in the glow of the lamplight. She wondered if they knew in that suspended instant that their joy would last forever, or if they had simply been lost in each other, unaware that the rain was watching. The fire in the hearth flared softly, as though in encouragement. The bakery's golden lamps hummed with warmth. Even the scent of cinnamon seemed to grow sweeter, richer, as if the walls themselves were urging her to listen. The notebook trembled again. A single line appeared. "Moments belong not in cages but in hearts." Clara's breath caught. She looked to Mr. Alcott, who gave her that same secret, knowing smile. Henry folded his hands, watching intently. The children leaned forward, eyes wide with wonder. Very carefully, Clara lifted the sphere higher. The glow spread, filling the storeroom, seeping into the shelves, into the jars of honey, into the flour-dusted corners. The ticking that had once filled the chest was now everywhere, surrounding them in a soft, steady rhythm. And then the sphere cracked. It did not shatter, did not break into pieces. It simply opened, like a flower unfurling its petals. Light spilled out, silver and rainbow, warm and endless. It swept through the bakery, through the walls, through the windows. carrying the scent of fresh rain and roses. For a single heartbeat, time inside the Copper Kettle Bakery held still. And then the raindrops outside began to move again. They slid down the glass, gentle and free. The storm resumed its song, a steady patter against the world. The ticking faded, replaced by the sound of rain's rhythm. The sphere was gone. In its place, only Clara's empty hands remained. But her heart was full, so full she thought it might overflow. The notebook glowed with one final message. Every storm carries a story. This one carried love, and now it carries you. Clara blinked back tears. She didn't quite understand. Henry placed his hand over his pocket watch, which ticked normally once more. The children sighed in wonder while their mother held them close. Mr. Alcott exhaled softly, almost like a prayer. "Ah," he murmured. So it chose release. The fire burned brighter, steadier. The bakery returned to itself, warm, safe, golden. Yet something within it had changed. Or perhaps they themselves had changed. The storm outside had grown calmer, the rain now a soft lullaby against the roof. And in that quiet, the Copper Kettle Bakery felt cozier than ever. The glow had faded, but the warmth it left behind lingered in every corner of the bakery. The shelves of flour and jars of jam stood exactly as before, yet somehow richer, softer, as though touched by a secret only they would remember. Clara closed her notebook gently. Its pages were still warm, though no more words appeared. She pressed her palm against the cover, whispering a quiet thank you to whatever force had given it life. Henry slipped his watch back into his vest pocket. The tick was steady again, ordinary, familiar, but he touched it with a tenderness that hadn't been there before. Perhaps he, too, had carried moments he longed to keep. And now he understood that letting them breathe was its own kind of keeping. The children tugged at their mother's sleeve. Was it real? One whispered. Their mother smiled, brushing damp curls from their foreheads. Real enough, she said softly. Mr. Alcott dusted flour from his apron and returned to the hearth. Well, he said with a chuckle, after such things, the only cure is tea, and cocoa for the little ones. The spell might have broken, but the coziness returned twice as strong. Soon, cups were steaming again, the fire hummed its soft tune, and the bakery filled with the comforting clink of spoons against mugs. The scent of cinnamon rolls, still warm in the oven, wrapped around them like a blanket. Outside, the storm had gentled. The heavy downpour was now a quiet patter, each raindrop a soft drumbeat on the roof. The windows no longer held frozen jewels, but beads of water that traced lazy paths down the glass. The whole town seemed to exhale in relief. Clara curled into her chair with her cocoa, her notebook resting in her lap. She no longer felt the need to write. The story was complete, and she carried it inside her now. Henry sat by the fire, his scarf draped over the back of his chair. His eyes were half closed, lulled by the warmth and the rhythm of the rain. Even the children, sugared with cocoa and biscuits, had begun to yawn, their heads leaning sleepily against their mother's arms. Mr. Alcott moved quietly around the room, his steps slow, his humming low and gentle. It was the same tune he always hummed soft, unrecognizable, but endlessly calming. If you listened closely, you might have thought it was the song of the storm itself, slowed into comfort. The lamps glowed golden, not too bright, not too dim, their light pooling softly on the wooden tables. The fire cracked only now and then, each spark a tiny lullaby. No one hurried, no one worried. Time flowed gently, like honey spilling from a jar. Clara rested her head against the back of her chair and let her eyelids grow heavy. She thought of the sphere, of the couple, frozen in rainlit joy, and felt her heart soften. Somewhere, in some way, their love still lived, not trapped, not forgotten, but carried forward in the rhythm of rain, in the warmth of cocoa, in the glow of a small-town bakery. The storm sang its lullaby outside. Inside, the Copper Kettle Bakery listened and held its guests in perfect safety. Slowly, the world grew softer. Words blurred, thought drifted into dream. And as the last lamp dimmed ever so slightly, as if the bakery itself were closing its eyes, the rain whispered its final line. Every storm carries a story. Tonight, it carried you safely to rest. The Copper Kettle Bakery breathed with warmth. Every brick, every beam of wood, every polished table seemed to sigh in contentment, as though the walls themselves had shared in the secret and now rested easy. The fire had softened two glowing embers. They no longer leaped or sparked, but pulsed like a sleeping heart, steady and calm. Shadows stretched across the room, long and gentle, swaying in rhythm with the rain outside. Clara's cocoa mug sat empty on the table, a faint wisp of steam still rising from it. Her notebook lay closed, silent now, though she knew it was never truly empty. If she opened it tomorrow, perhaps more words would appear, or perhaps not. She didn't mind either way. The silence of the pages felt just as magical as their secrets. Henry had dozed off in his chair, his scarf slipping from one shoulder. His pocket watch rested on the table beside him, ticking faintly, like the world's smallest lullaby. Every few beats, the sound merged with the rhythm of the rain, the two heartbeats man and storm becoming one. The children slept with their heads in their mother's lap. Cheeks were flushed from cocoa, their lips curled in the faintest of smiles, as though their dreams had picked up where the story left off. Their mother stroked their hair in slow, thoughtful motions, her gaze far away but her smile soft. And behind the counter, Mr. Alcott polished a tray, though not with his usual care. His motions were lazy now, almost ceremonial, as though he too had surrendered to the peace that filled the bakery. From time to time he glanced toward the storeroom, but he did not go back in. The chest was closed, the sphere was gone, the story was complete. The storm outside whispered gently against the roof. No thunder, no flashes of light, just a quiet drizzle, the kind that tucks the world into bed. Every raindrop sang the same soft song. Rest, rest, rest. The lamps burned low, their glow no more than the memory of sunlight. Golden halos blurred at the edges, melting into the still air. If you looked closely, you might have thought the light was swaying in rhythm with Mr. Alcott's quiet humming. The bakery had no need for clocks now. The night would last as long as it needed. Clara leaned her head against the window pane. Outside, the cobblestone street glistened, each puddle holding the reflection of a lamp or a blossom from the flower shop next door. The whole town seemed wrapped in a blanket of rain, safe, hushed, timeless. Her eyelids grew heavier, her breath slowed. The warmth of the bakery sank into her bones, into her thoughts, until there was no distinction between the fire's glow and her own quiet heart. She thought she heard the notebook whisper one last line, though she couldn't tell if it was real or simply the edge of sleep. The story rests now, and so may you. The fire dimmed, the lamps softened. The rain became a lullaby without end. And in the coziest corner of Willowmere, the Copper Kettle Bakery kept watch, cradling its guests in dreams. The Copper Kettle Bakery sat in silence, but it was the kind of silence that hummed with life. The rain tapped its gentle rhythm against the windows, each drop a soft knock that no one needed to answer. The world outside had folded itself into shadows and silver light, while inside, the glow of the lamps lingered like warm candle halos. Clara was nearly asleep in her chair. Her breath had become so steady it could have been mistaken for part of the storm's own rhythm. The closed notebook rested beside her as though it too had fallen into slumber. Henry's head tilted to one side, his scarf gathered under his chin like a pillow. His watch ticked faintly, slower than before, as though it too was drifting toward dreams. The children were completely gone to sleep now, their small shoulders rising and falling in the slow tide of rest. Their mother leaned back against the chair, her eyes closed, though a faint smile still touched her lips as her hand rested protectively over theirs. Mr. Alcott moved only once more that night. He dimmed the last of the lamps, one by one, until the bakery glowed only with the soft orange light of the embers. Then he lowered himself into a chair behind the counter, folded his hands, and closed his eyes. Even the old baker deserved a share in the storm's rest. The rain carried on, endlessly patient, endlessly kind. It didn't rush, it didn't fade. It sang and whispered and soothed, weaving itself into every dream that grew in that room. Time no longer mattered. The bakery, the storm, the people inside, all of them floated together, as though the world itself had chosen to pause in the sweetest, softest way. The air was thick with comfort. Cinnamon, chocolate, bread, and the faintest hint of roses from the shop next door. Each breath was like an embrace, each sound like a lullaby. And if you listened very carefully, beneath the rain, beneath the crackle of the last ember, you might still hear it. The heartbeat of a story, resting now, but not gone. A gentle promise that when the rain returned, so too would the magic. For tonight, though, Storm had given all it needed to give. And so, the bakery, the town, the rain, and the dreams within them sank into the deepest, quietest sleep. The Copper Kettle Bakery drifted in quiet. The chairs stood steady, the tables worn smooth by years of hands and stories, and each one seemed to hum with the memory of the night. The shelves were heavy with jars of jam and flour sacks, but even they looked as though they had grown drowsy, content to simply be. The rain outside never hurried, never rushed. It fell like a mother's hand, smoothing the hair of a child, endlessly patient, endlessly soft. Each drop landed on the roof, the street, the windows, until all the sounds blurred into one endless lullaby. The lamps glowed lower, lower, until their halos melted into the dark, like the last candle in a room where everyone has already fallen asleep. The bakery did not need light now. The fire was no longer flames, only a bed of coals, breathing out its last warm sighs. Clara's notebook lay still, its cover closed, its stories safe. She dreamed, though no one could say of what. Perhaps she dreamed of the couple in the sphere, still caught in their rainlit moment. Perhaps she dreamed of storms yet to come, bringing new stories, new secrets. Or perhaps she dreamed of nothing at all, only peace. Henry dreamed too, the soft tick of his pocket watch keeping rhythm with the storm. In his dreams, all clocks slowed, every gear turned with ease. Every second stretched wide enough to hold everything he had ever loved. The children stirred faintly in their sleep, curling closer to their mother. She, too, had drifted into rest, her hands still resting protectively across them. her breath rising and falling in perfect time with theirs. And Mr. Alcott? The old baker who had watched storms come and go for longer than anyone else in Willowmere, sat with his eyes closed, his hands folded, his heart steady. In his dreams, perhaps he was a young man again, kneading dough at dawn, whistling softly as rain began to patter on the roof. The bakery itself dreamed too. It dreamed of every loaf ever baked, every laugh ever shared inside its walls, every secret whispered, every comfort offered. And in that dreaming, the bakery glowed with the kind of warmth no storm could ever wash away. Outside, Willowmere slept under the rain. Every rooftop, every cobblestone, every ivy-covered wall was wrapped in silver mist. The river ran slow and quiet. The flowers in the shop next door tucked their petals close, listening to the lullaby of water. The whole town was cradled by the storm, as though the clouds themselves had bent low to hold it. And so the night stretched on, and on and on. Nothing hurried, nothing asked to be finished. There was no end to reach, no moment to capture. Only the rhythm of rain, only the hush of dreams, only the gentle, endless quiet. Until at last, the storm and the story became the same thing, single perfect lullaby, one that never ended. Morning light began to filter through the rain-streaked windows, soft and golden. The storm outside had softened into a gentle drizzle, tiny droplets shimmering like scattered pearls along the cobblestone streets. Inside the bakery, the air smelled of warm bread and melted chocolate, inviting everyone to start the day slowly. Clara stirred, blinking against the soft light, her notebook open on the table. New words had begun to appear on the page overnight, written in that same delicate script. The heart of a storm never truly rests. It simply waits for new stories to arrive. Henry yawned and stretched, noticing that the ticking of his watch felt more lively, almost cheerful, as if the storm's magic had stayed with him. The children had awoken first, pressing their small noses to the window to watch raindrops racing down the glass, their laughter light and full of wonder. Mr. Alcott was already at the oven, carefully sliding in a tray of golden pastries. The smell curled through the room, coaxing everyone awake. He glanced at Clara with a wink. "It seems the storm has left a little magic for us to discover today," he said, his voice soft but full of mischief. Curious, Clara walked to the storeroom where the chest had once rested. The floorboards creaked beneath her steps, and for a moment she thought she heard the faintest tick-tock from somewhere deep inside the walls. She smiled. Even though the sphere had vanished, the bakery still felt alive with secrets waiting to be found. Outside, a small puddle reflected the pale morning sun. From it, Clara noticed a tiny figure robin, feathers still wet from the storm, hopping gracefully across the glistening stones. Paused to shake the rain from its wings, then hopped closer to the bakery door, as if it had been sent to remind them that even storms end with beauty. The children raced to the door, carefully splashing through the puddles, and Mr. Alcott chuckled, lifting a small wooden tray of warm muffins for them. Henry smiled quietly from his chair, watching the little scene unfold, feeling the same gentle magic of the night still lingering in the air. Clara returned to her notebook, pen in hand. She began to write not words appearing magically this time, but her own thoughts. The words flowed easily, inspired by the storm, the bakery, and the new morning. Stories of little joys, quiet discoveries, and small wonders started to fill the pages, each one wrapped in the warmth of the bakery's magic. Even as the drizzle continued outside, the Copper Kettle Bakery had become more than just a place to wait out a storm. It had become a place where moments lingered, where the smallest acts of kindness, curiosity, laughter could grow into memories that felt as eternal as the magic that filled its walls. By mid-morning, the drizzle had softened into a gentle mist, curling around the bakery like a whisper. Clara noticed a small envelope tucked into the front door frame, damp at the edges, but sealed with. Inside was a tiny "Meet Me Be." Clara's heart skipped. She glanced at Henry, who was arranging fresh pastries on the counter. "Henry, someone left this for me," she whispered. He leaned, the children. Sensing excitement, crowded around her, their eyes sparkling. "Are we going on an adventure?" one of them asked, bouncing on their tea. "Perhaps," Clara said with a gentle smile. She tucked the note safely into her notebook and motioned for everyone to follow her. Outside, the town shimmered under the mist. Cobblestones glistened, lanterns reflected in puddles. Da-da-da-da, and the fountain in the town square glimmered as if sprinkled with tiny diamonds. Clara led the way, careful not to slip, Henry beside her, and the children skipping. At the fountain, a small wooden box rested on the edge. Its surface was wet with mist, and a soft ticking emanated from within. Clara knelt to examine it. The box was smaller than the one from the bakery, yet it's RH. "Do you thieve?" Clara nodded slow. Henry crouched beside her. "Whatever's inside, it's patient. It's waiting for us to notice it, just like the SP." Together, they carefully lifted the lid. Inside was a single, glowing crystal, shaped like a teardrop. Light shimmered from within, pulsing slowly, rhythmically, like a heartbeat. And inside the crystal, something moved. A tiny scene. A street in the town during the storm. A figure carrying a bundle of letters, each one glowing faintly with golden light. Clara gasped softly. "It's waiting to be delivered," she whispered. Henry nodded. "Maybe it's our job to carry this moment forward." The children leaned closer, eyes wide. "Can we help?" one asked. Clara smiled. "Of course. The storm seems to be giving us a new story on. We're part of it now." With that, they gathered around the fountain, carefully lifting the glowing crystal together. Each of them felt the soft warmth radiating from it, a quiet, comforting pulse that reminded them of the sphere from the bakery. The rain misted over their faces, sparkling in the light, and the world seemed to pause just for them. And as they turned back toward the bakery, carrying the crystal gently, Clara felt a thrill of quiet magic settle over her heart. The storm may have passed, but its stories were far from over. As Clara and the children carried the glowing crystal back toward the bakery, the mist parted slightly, revealing a narrow alley they had never noticed before. The cobblestones gleamed under the soft morning light, and faint lanterns hung along the walls, flickering as if welcoming them. At the end of the alley stood a small shop, its windows fogged from the rain. A sign swung above the door. The Whispering Quill. Letters, maps, and oddities. The door creaked open just as they approached, and a tiny bell jingled softly. Inside, an elderly woman with silver hair tied in a braid and spectacles perched on the tip of her nose peered over a counter piled high with papers and scrolls. "Ah," she said, her voice like the rustle of old parchment. "The storm has sent you, hasn't it?" Clara tilted her head. The storm. The woman nodded knowingly. Indeed, it leaves little breadcrumbs for those willing to follow. And it seems you have found one of its gifts. She gestured at the glowing crystal in their hands. The children gasped, stepping closer. Henry bent down to examine it. "What is it?" he asked. The woman's eyes twinkled. It is a message in a moment, carried from someone who wanted to ensure it reached the right hands. The letters inside that tiny bundle, she gestured toward the miniature scene within the crystal, contained wishes, secrets, and kindness meant for those who truly notice the small wonders of the world. Clara looked at Henry and the children. To deliver them. The woman nodded. "Yes, but beware. Letter leads you somewhere unexpected. Each one asks you to notice something others might overlook. And the storm tends to guide you in peculiar ways." Just then the crystal pulsed, brighter this time, and a soft voice seemed to echo from within. "Follow the first light." Clara raised an eyebrow. "The first light?" "The lanterns," the woman said softly, pointing toward the alley walls. "They will show the way, but you must walk carefully, for the story has its own rhythm, and it will test your curiosity and patience." The children squealed with excitement. "Can we start now?" "Yes," Clara said, a spark of adventure lighting her eyes. "Let's see where the storm wants us to go." They followed the alley, the lanterns flickering and casting long shadows. Every puddle reflected tiny fragments of the sky, tiny fragments of the town, as if encouraging them to pay attention. At the first fork in the alley, a small note appeared pinned to a post. "Step lightly, speak softly, and the next moment will reveal itself." Clara smiled, feeling the familiar thrill of a story unfolding. She glanced at Henry. "This feels like another kind of adventure like. We're part of the storm's own tale." Henry chuckled softly. "Perhaps the storm is part of ours." With that, they moved forward, the glowing crystal guiding them, the alley twisting gently like a ribbon through the town. Around them, Willamere seemed alive in ways they had never noticed them. Distant chime of a clock tower, the flutter of curtains in the upper windows, the faint scent of baked bread from side streets, and somewhere in the mist, the storm whispered its quiet promise that every step they took would lead to a story worth carrying. The alley twisted and narrowed until they arrived at a tiny courtyard, almost hidden behind a cluster of ivy-draped walls. At the center was a bronze fountain, the water trickling softly despite the lingering mist. The glowing crystal pulsed again, pointing toward a small wooden door set into the far wall. Clara approached cautiously, but before she could reach it, a soft giggle echoed from the shadows. The children froze. Henry's hand instinctively went to his pocket watch. From behind a vine-draped archway emerged a small boy, no older than 7, with messy auburn hair and bright, curious eyes. He held a bundle of letters tied together with a ribbon. "Hello," he said. "I think you're looking for these." Clara knelt to meet his gaze. "Are you the one who left the crystal?" The boy shrugged. "Maybe. Maybe not. The storm tells me things, though. It told me you'd be coming." The children edged closer, peeking at the letters. Each envelope glimmered faintly, as if touched by the same magic as the crystal. Clara reached out to take the first one, and the moment her fingers brushed the paper, a warm glow spread through her hand. "Each letter has to be delivered," the boy explained. "Some go to people, some go to places, some just need to be discovered." Henry glanced at Clara. "It seems the storm is giving us a task," he said quietly, "one that will take us across the town." The boy nodded. "Follow the first letter's glow. It will show you who it's meant for. But you must move carefully. Some paths are hidden." Clara opened the first envelope. Inside was a folded piece of parchment with a single sentence. "At the baker's window where the ivy leans, you will find someone waiting for a smile." Clara looked at the children, who were bouncing with excitement. "I think the storm wants us to find this person." They turned back toward the main street of Willowmere, guided by the soft glow of the crystal and the instructions of the letter. The town felt different now. The mist made everything seem mysterious, and every window, doorway, and shadow hinted at a secret waiting to be discovered. As they approached the bakery district, a soft voice called from a doorway. "Excuse me?" A woman stood there, holding a small, scruffy cat. Her eyes were tired, but there was a quiet hope in them. Clara realized immediately that she must be the person the letter was meant for. The cat purred against her chest as if recognizing the magic. Clara smiled and handed the letter over. "This came for you," she said softly. The woman's eyes widened. She untied the ribbon and opened the envelope. The moment she read the words, the cat stretched, yawned, and a faint shimmer of light passed over the woman's face. She looked up at Clara and the children with gratitude. I didn't even know I was waiting for this," she whispered. Henry stepped closer. "Some moments," he said quietly, "arrive exactly when they're meant to." The woman nodded, smiling. "I can feel it, thank you." The first delivery complete, the crystal pulsed again, faintly pointing them toward the next mystery waiting in the town. The storm's story wasn't finished, yet Tan, Clara, Henry, and the children were now a part of its unfolding. The crystal pulsed more urgently now, guiding Clara and the group through the narrow streets of Willowmere. The mist had lifted slightly, revealing cobblestones slick with rain and tiny gardens spilling over with late summer blooms. Their next destination appeared to be the edge of the town square, near a tiny bookshop they had passed many times, but never noticed closely. The shop's door was ajar, and a faint flicker of candlelight danced across the fogged glass. Inside, a young man with dark, tousled hair knelt on the floor, trying to untangle a pile of parchment that had fallen from a high shelf. "Oh, hello," he said, startled, looking up at the group. "I didn't expect anyone here this early, or at all." Clara held out the glowing crystal. "I think this belongs to you," she said, feeling a gentle warmth spread through her hand. The crystal's light extended toward him, and the parchments on the floor seemed to hum faintly. The young man's eyes widened. I've been trying to organize these letters for weeks. I thought I was losing them." He bent down and picked up one envelope that glimmered slightly in the candlelight. "How did you know?" "It's part of a story the storm left for us," Clara explained. "The letters need to reach certain people. Each one carries something special." He laughed softly, shaking his head in disbelief. "Special is one way to put it. I didn't realize they could glow like that." Crystal pulsed again, and a soft vibration seemed to echo through the room. The young man unfolded the letter carefully. The words on the page shimmered slightly, revealing instructions. "Plant a seed where no one expects, and water it with kindness." He frowned thoughtfully. "A seed. Not literal, I hope." Clara smiled. "Maybe not. But the letter is asking you to do something small that will make a difference for someone else." The young man nodded slowly, a sense of purpose forming in his eyes. think I understand. It's not just a letter, it's a task. Meanwhile, the children had begun exploring the shop quietly, peeking at the rows of books and maps. One of them discovered a tiny drawer behind the counter, which contained several small envelopes marked with the same golden glow. "Look," the child whispered, "there's more." Clara picked up the envelopes carefully. It seems the storm has left multiple tasks for today. We'll need to follow each one. Henry, observing the room, noticed that the crystal's glow shifted slightly, pointing toward a small trapdoor at the back of the shop. "Perhaps the next step is down there," he suggested. The group exchanged excited glances. With the young man now joining them, they gently lifted the trapdoor. A spiral staircase descended into a warm, softly lit room below the shop. The walls were lined with maps, jars of spices, and shelves of curious trinkets, all humming faintly with the same magic as the crystal. At the center of the room was a small table with a single envelope resting atop it. The crystal floated just above the envelope, pulsing faster now. Clara reached out carefully, feeling a rush of warmth as soon as her fingers brushed the paper. The letter inside read, "To heal what is hidden, one must first see what is overlooked." The group paused, pondering the meaning. Clara realized that this delivery wouldn't just take them across the town, it would guide them toward discovering something unseen, something that had been quietly waiting for attention all along. Henry tightened his grip on the crystal. "I think the storm is leading us somewhere very important this time," he said. And with that, they descended further into the map-lined room, ready to follow the next thread of the magical journey. Clara, Henry, the children, and the young man carefully followed the spiral staircase to the lower chamber. The warm light revealed a large map of Willowmere pinned to the wall. Small points on the map glimmered faintly, each one marked with the same golden glow as the crystal. "Looks like the letters are connected," Clara said, tracing the first glowing dot with her finger. "Each one might lead us to the next task." The young man nodded. "And this one," he pointed to a dimly glowing dot near the edge of town, "is the farthest. It must be important." The crystal pulsed, pointing toward a narrow street that Clara had never noticed before, tucked between two tall buildings. The children ran ahead, squealing in excitement. As they turned the corner, they discovered a small, forgotten courtyard. Vines climbed the walls, and an old wooden cart rested in the center, covered in moss and dew. A soft, scratching sound came from the cart. Clara crouched to look and gasped a tiny fox. Its fur, damp from the lingering mist, peeked at them with wide, intelligent eyes. Around its neck was a small satchel. Inside, they found another glowing envelope. The children whispered in awe. The fox brought it. Henry lifted the envelope, and the fox watched them carefully, tilting its head. Clara opened the letter, which read, "To uncover what has been lost, one must first listen to the quiet voices that wait." Clara frowned thoughtfully. Lost in quiet voices. "This isn't about delivering something. It's about discovering something hidden." The fox padded ahead, leading them down a narrow alley that opened onto the back of an old, abandoned toy shop. The windows were dusty, the door hanging slightly off its hinges, but inside, faint shadows moved across the walls. Stepping cautiously inside, Clara and the group saw rows of shelves filled with toys left behind. Wooden soldiers, dolls, tiny carriages, and spinning tops. But in the center of the room was a small chest, locked and covered in dust. The crystal glowed brighter as they approached. The young man whispered, "I think this is what the letter meant. Something here has been forgotten, hidden away." Clara nodded and carefully set the crystal on top of the chest. The lock clicked open as if guided by unseen hands, and inside lay dozens of small, folded notes messages written by townsfolk long ago, each one expressing hope, dreams, or unspoken gratitude. Some were addressed to people who had long moved away, others to neighbors whose names had been forgotten. The children picked up a few notes, reading them aloud. Each one shimmered briefly in their hands, as if the magic of the storm was breathing life into the words again. This is what was lost, Clara realized. The quiet voices, the messages that were waiting to be heard. Henry nodded. And now we can deliver them, bring these little stories back to the people who need them. The fox twitched its ears, as if agreeing, and darted to the doorway, ready to guide them onward. Clara smiled, then we continued. The storm isn't finished, and neither are the stories. With the chest of letters secured, they followed the fox back into the misty streets of Willowmere, ready to bring the lost voices back to life, one magical delivery at a time. Clara carefully selected the first note from the chest. The words shimmered faintly in her hand. To the gardener who hums to the roses each morning, leave a token of gratitude at the gate. Henry glanced at her. Do you know who that might be? Clara shook her head, but the crystal pulsed, pointing them toward the outskirts of the town. They followed its glow through winding lanes, past ivy-covered cottages, until they reached a small house with a wooden gate. Behind it, the faintest hum drifted on the air, the tune of someone singing softly while tending a garden. A man bent over the rose bushes, gently pruning blooms as dew clung to the petals. He hummed, completely unaware of the group approaching. Clara carefully placed a small bouquet of wildflowers from the alley at the gate, and the crystal's light flickered in approval. The man straightened, surprised. His eyes widened as he noticed the flowers, and a smile spread across his face. Someone left these for me, he murmured, running a hand over the petals. Didn't even notice I needed them. The children giggled quietly, delighted at the magic of the moment. Henry whispered, "It seems the storm's letters are reminders, small sparks of joy for people who may have forgotten to notice happiness." Before they could move on, the man called softly, "Wait, you deliver these?" Clara smiled. "We did. There's more, if you'd like to follow the magic." The man's eyes lit up. "I think I will." He picked up a watering can and dusted off the petals, then followed them down the lane, curiosity guiding him like a second glow beside the crystal. The next note led them to the bakery district, where a small bell tinkled over a forgotten corner shop. Inside, a young seamstress was threading needles, bent over a stack of colorful fabric. The letter shimmered in Clara's hand. For the hands that mend and stitch, leave a ribbon to brighten the day. Clara tied a delicate ribbon around a spool of thread and placed it on the counter. The seamstress looked up, surprised, and her frown melted into a smile as she noticed the tiny token. "Oh, someone thought of me," she whispered, touching the ribbon gently. I never realized how much a small kindness could matter." The crystal pulsed again, stronger now, guiding them to the next delivery. Each note revealed a new part of Willowmere: the quiet blacksmith polishing tools in the mist, the librarian arranging books long forgotten, the innkeeper who had been waiting for a letter he thought he would never receive. With every delivery, the town seemed to awaken in subtle ways. Lanterns glimmered more warmly, flowers opened just slightly wider, and faint smiles appeared on faces that had grown accustomed to the ordinary rhythms of life. The children raced ahead, helping each person they visited, learning that each act of attention and care created ripples far beyond what they could see. Henry and Clara followed, guiding them carefully, while the young man carried the remaining letters from the chest, marveling at how the storm's magic was unfolding in real time. By mid-afternoon, the chest was nearly empty. Each delivery had revealed something hidden, overlooked, or forgotten. Clara realized the storm had given them more than just a set of tasks. It reminded the entire town to notice the small, bright moments in their lives. And just as they were about to return to the bakery, the crystal pulsed one last time, pointing toward the town square, where a shadowed figure waited beneath the fountain, holding a bundle tied in the same golden ribbon. Clara, Henry, the children, and the young man approached the fountain, their footsteps echoing softly against the cobblestones. The shadowed figure under the fountain was draped in a long cloak, and a small bundle shimmered faintly in their hands. As they drew closer, the figure lifted their head, revealing the face of an elderly woman with kind, wise eyes. "I've been waiting," she said, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had seen many storms. "The letters have done their work, but now the final task is yours." Clara stepped forward, curiosity and anticipation fluttering in her chest. "What is it?" she asked. The woman gestured to the bundle. "Inside is a message that belongs to the entire town. It has been waiting for someone who could understand the magic behind the storm, the one who could bring everyone together." Henry and the children exchanged glances. "We're supposed to deliver it?" one of the children asked. "Yes," the woman replied, "but it is not a simple delivery. You will need to gather those you met today, each person who received a letter. Together, you will create the town's story, one that can only exist when everyone contributes their small part." Clara carefully unwrapped the bundle. Inside was a scroll glowing faintly, shimmering like the crystal. The words appeared as she read them aloud. "Bring the gifts of attention, care, and kindness together in one place. Let the storm's magic become a story of Willowmere." The group turned to leave, following the crystal's glow as it led them through the town. One by one, the gardener, the seamstress, the blacksmith, the librarian, the innkeeper, and even the woman from the fountain joined them. Each carried a small token from their letter of flower, a ribbon, a hammer, a book, a loaf of bread. By the time they returned to the town square, the mist had lifted, revealing the square bathed in soft, golden light. The fountain sparkled in the sun, and every lantern, every window, every corner of the town seemed to lean in, waiting. "Ah!" Clara held the scroll aloft. "Everyone," she said, her voice ringing with warmth. "The storm has left us a story. It's ours to tell, together." One by one, each person placed their token around the fountain, forming a circle. As they did, the crystal floated above the center, pulsing brighter and brighter. The tokens shimmered, each one glowing with the magic of small acts, of overlooked kindness, of quiet joy. And then, as Clara read the final lines of the scroll aloud, the fountain erupted with light. A soft, warm glow spread through the town, touching every roof, every street, every heart. It was as if Willowmere itself had become a living story, bound together by the magic of noticing, caring, and sharing. The children cheered. Henry smiled. Even the elderly woman from the fountain nodded, satisfied. "You've done it," she said. "The storm's magic is complete, but its spirit will remain in Willowmere. In every small act, in every moment of attention." Clara looked around at the faces of the townsfolk, the children, Henry, and the young man. She realized that the storm had given them not just a series of tasks, but a way to see the world differently, to notice the invisible threads that connected everyone, the quiet magic in ordinary life. As the sun broke fully through the mist, warming cobblestones and rooftops alike, Clara tucked the crystal into her pocket. The town had its story. The storm had done its work. And for the first time that day, Clara felt the calm certainty that every story, every act of magic, and every small kindness could truly ripple through the world if only people noticed. As the golden light settled over the town square, Clara and the group made their way back to the Copper Kettle Bakery. The doors creaked open, welcoming them like an old friend. Inside, the air smelled of warm bread, fresh cinnamon, and something new, a hint of herbs that no one could quite place. The townsfolk who had helped deliver the letters followed, carrying small bundles and trinkets from their journeys. Each person had a story to share. The gardener laughed as he recounted how the roses seemed to bloom brighter when he returned. The seamstress tied a ribbon in the hair of one of the children, and the innkeeper handed out small pastries as a thank you for being part of the magic. Clara set the glowing crystal on the counter, pulsed once more faintly, then dimmed. She felt a warmth in her chest, a quiet reassurance that the magic hadn't vanished, had simply woven itself into the town's everyday life. Just then, a small knock sounded at the back door. Clara opened it to find a delivery pigeon, tied to its leg, a tiny envelope sealed with golden wax. Henry carefully untied it. Inside was a short note. "Even storms that pass leave seeds for tomorrow.
Ow!
Watch for them, and the story will continue." The children squealed, imagining what seeds for tomorrow could mean. Clara smiled, tucking the note into her notebook. "The magic isn't finished," she said. "It's only beginning." Mr. Alcott appeared from the kitchen, carrying a tray of fresh scones. "You've all worked hard today," he said. "Even storms need their witnesses. Tonight, we celebrate the little miracles." As the bakery filled with laughter, the scent of baked goods, and the warm chatter of friends old and new. The rain began again outside, but this time it was gentle, playful, like a soft percussion in a lullaby. Drops tapped on the windows, on the roof, on the cobblestone streets, each one sparkling in the afternoon light. Clara looked around the bakery, at the people she had come to care for, at the children whose eyes shone with wonder at Henry, the young man, and the townsfolk who had joined their journey. She realized that the storm's magic wasn't only in the crystal or the letters, it was in every shared smile, every act of kindness, every story told and retold. The fox from earlier appeared at the doorway, tail flicking. It carried another tiny envelope in its mouth. Clara laughed softly, knowing that tomorrow another small adventure would begin. And in that moment, the Copper Kettle Bakery was more than a place to wait out a storm in. It was the heart of Willowmere, the center of magic, warmth, and stories that connected everyone. Outside, the rain whispered secrets to the town, and inside, hearts listened, ready to carry them forward. The day ended, but the magic lingered. And in Willowmere, every street, every window, and every corner seemed to hum softly, waiting for the next story to arrive. As the evening deepened, The bakery's warm glow spilled onto the cobblestone streets. Clara was stacking napkins when a soft tapping came from the window. She peeked outside and saw a small flickering light hovering in the mist. "Henry?" she whispered. "Do you see that?" Henry leaned closer. The light hovered just above the street, dancing like a firefly. It seemed deliberate, almost beckoning. Before they could step outside, the fox darted past them and into the street, its eyes fixed on the glowing figure. The children scrambled after it, laughing in excitement. Clara followed cautiously, Henry close behind, and the townsfolk from earlier trailed behind, curious and cautious. The light led them to the old clock tower at the edge of Willowmere, a place the town rarely visited after dark. Its hands were frozen at midnight, and ivy clung to its face like green lace. At the base of the tower, a small wooden trapdoor creaked open, revealing a narrow spiral staircase lit by tiny lanterns. The fox disappeared inside, glancing back to make sure they followed. Clara took a deep breath. "Looks like the storm isn't finished yet," she said. As they climbed the staircase, the walls hummed faintly, vibrating with an energy they could feel in their bones. At the top, the lanterns opened onto a circular room high above the town. The flickering light resolved into hundreds of tiny orbs floating in midair, each glowing with soft gold, silver, or blue light. In the center floated a large, delicate crystal shaped like a raindrop, spinning slowly. Around it hovered small, ephemeral figure-tiny shapes that seemed almost human, almost animal, moving in time with the crystal's pulsing light. A gentle voice echoed in the chamber. "You have brought the letters. You have delivered the lost messages. Now, the storm asks you to witness the story it has been weaving." The townsfolk gasped, children wide-eyed. Clara stepped closer, entranced. The crystal pulsed brighter, as if recognizing her presence. "You see," the voice continued, "every act of attention, every small kindness, every moment of care you performed has been gathered here. The magic of the storm is not in the crystal alone, it is in the hearts of those who notice, who act, who share." One of the children reached out toward a floating orb, and it gently touched their palm, melting into tiny glowing motes that spread warmth across their skin. The others tried, and the room hummed with laughter, wonder, and astonishment. Clara turned to Henry. "It's not just about delivering letters anymore. The storm wants to show us something, larger than the town, larger than the bakery." Henry nodded. "I think it's showing us how small actions ripple out, how magic can grow from noticing what others overlook." As they watched, the crystal's light expanded, spilling through the windows of the tower, drifting down over the streets of Willowmere, over rooftops and alleys, over gardens and fountains. Every corner it touched shimmered faintly, bringing a soft glow to the town that would linger long after the storm passed. And then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the lights condensed back into the crystal, spinning more slowly, and finally settling into a gentle, steady glow. The tiny figures winked out, leaving the room quiet, warm, and still. Clara smiled. "The storm has given us its gift," she whispered. "Not just letters, not just tasks, but a way to see the magic that's always around us." The next morning, the town woke to an unusual quiet. Rain had stopped completely, but the streets shimmered as if they were sprinkled with a fine layer of light. Clara stepped outside the bakery, the crystal tucked safely in her pocket, noticed something strange. Small glowing footprints leading from the fountain toward the market square. "Henry," she said, pointing. "Look at this. Someone or something has been moving through the town last night." Henry adjusted his glasses, examining the trail. "Not human," he murmured. "Whatever left these prints is small and deliberate." The children rushed forward, trying to follow the glowing trail. At the market square, they found the first ripple of the storm's magic: baskets of fruit neatly stacked, fresh bread left on doorsteps, notes tucked under shop doors, all glowing faintly with golden light. From behind a fruit stall emerged a young boy with bright, inquisitive eyes, holding a tiny lantern. "I've been helping," he said shyly. "The lights. They told me where to go." Clara knelt. "You're a part of the magic too?" The boy nodded. "The storm. It whispers. It tells me who needs help." Henry smiled. "It seems the storm is giving the town its own little guardians. People who notice, who act." The glowing footprints led them further, past the toy shop, past the library, and toward the river that wound along the edge of Willowmere. There, something extraordinary awaited. A small wooden raft floated near the riverbank, covered in tiny lanterns that bobbed gently on the water. Inside the raft was a bundle wrapped in cloth, glowing softly with the same golden shimmer as the crystal. Clara and the children carefully lifted the bundle. Inside were dozens of tiny figurines, each one representing a person, a child, or even a pet from Willowmere. The figurines seemed alive, moving subtly in their hands, as if breathing with their own tiny hearts. A note lay atop the bundle. "To see the town as it truly is, you must carry its stories together. Each action, each kindness, each small moment belongs to everyone." Clara felt a thrill. The storm. It's giving us a way to show the town its own magic. Henry examined the raft. "We need to place these where they belong, the figurines. They belong to the people they represent." The children split into pairs, each carrying a few figurines to the places and houses they recognized. With every placement, the figurine glowed brighter, and the person it represented received a small, warm reminder of joy of forgotten memory, a laugh from a neighbor, or a smile from a stranger. By midday, the entire town seemed to shimmer faintly, every corner alive with tiny sparks of magic. Clara looked around at the townsfolk, who were beginning to notice subtle changes. Flowers brighter, rooftops gleaming, laughter drifting from alleyways where it hadn't been heard in months. The crystal in Clara's pocket pulsed once, softly, a reminder that the storm's work was on T-finish, but that it had grown beyond just letters and deliveries. The town itself had become a living story, and Willowmere's magic now thrummed in every heart willing to notice it. The fox appeared again, guiding Clara toward the fountain. There, in the final glow of the afternoon, the entire town gathered, drawn by a sense of curiosity and wonder. Clara realized then that the storm's gift wasn't just the letters, the crystal, or the figurines. It was the way it had woven every person into the story, making everyone a part of something larger than themselves. And as the sun dipped low, casting long golden shadows across the square, Clara understood something entirely new. This was only the beginning. As night fell, a soft mist drifted back over Willowmere, carrying a faint hum that seemed to vibrate in the cobblestones themselves. Clara and the children were walking home from the fountain when a sudden ripple of light shot across the sky, splitting the clouds like a silver ribbon. "That's not rain," one of the children whispered. Henry squinted. "What's the signal?" Clara followed the glow to the edge of town, where the river curved sharply. There, partially hidden behind reeds, was a small, half-submerged wooden door, glowing faintly with golden light. A strange warmth radiated from it, inviting them to approach. The children hesitated, but Clara stepped forward. "Storm has left us another task," she murmured, "and I think it's one that can't wait." Henry nodded. "Be careful. This is something entirely new." Together, they pushed the door open. On the other side was a hidden chamber, carved directly into the riverbank. Inside, the walls glimmered with streaks of water that shone like liquid gold. And at the center floated a small pool, rippling without wind or current. From the pool rose tiny misty figure shapes that looked like memories, hopes, and dreams given form. A soft, echoing voice whispered, "To restore balance, one must mend what was broken." The town has awakened, but there are still shadows waiting to be remembered. Clara peered into the pool. Floating there were faint images of people and places that seemed familiar but blurred, incomplete. The fox appeared at her side, nudging her forward. "What do we do?" one of the children asked. "You have to complete them," Clara realized aloud. "Every act of kindness, every smile, every small story from today. That's the thread. We weave it together, and the shadows will become whole." The group worked carefully. Each time they touched a glowing fragment in the pool, it solidified into a miniature figure, a scene, or a memory from the town. The glow intensified, spreading warmth through the chamber. Henry's eyes widened. It's more than magic. It's history, memory, and hope all folded into one. Hours passed as they pieced together the fragments, the children laughing quietly at some of the small, forgotten moments that emerged. A long-lost kitten curled in a corner, a baker humming while kneading dough, a gardener's first bloom of spring. Finally, with a pulse of golden light, the chamber stilled. The pool reflected the entire town, alive and vibrant, each street and person perfectly restored. The voice whispered again, "Balance is found. The storm is past, but its story lives in those who notice, who care, and who act." Clara turned to the children. "We've done it. Not just the letters, not just the crystal. We've restored something much bigger than ourselves." The fox led them back through the hidden door to the riverside. Willowmere lay quiet, bathed in the moon's gentle glow, yet Clara could see the faint shimmer of magic lingering in every street and window. Henry smiled. "The storm isn't over," he said softly. "Its story will always be here, waiting for the next moment of notice, the next act of kindness." Clara tucked the crystal into her pocket once more, feeling the hum of magic beneath her fingertips. The children were sleepy but thrilled, chattering quietly about the shadows they had restored. And as they walked back toward the Copper Kettle Bakery, the town itself seemed to lean in, listening, ready for the next chapter that the storm war the townsfolk themselves would write. The next morning, the town of Willowmere stirred under an unusually crisp golden light. Clara stepped out of the bakery and noticed something peculiar. A faint trail of shimmering dust stretching from the market square toward the hills beyond the town. Henry bent down, examining it. This isn't ordinary dust, it seems. Enchanted. The storm left something new for us to uncover. The children bounced with excitement. A treasure hunt. One of them exclaimed. Following the trail, they reached the edge of the forest that bordered the hills. There, partially hidden behind a tangle of ferns, was a tiny wooden cabin they had never seen before. Its windows glowed softly, and the door was slightly ajar, creaking with the gentle wind. Inside, the cabin was unlike anything in Willowmere. Shelves lined with jars of glowing herbs, tiny glowing orbs floating near the ceiling, and maps pinned with glowing threads created an aura of careful magic. In the center of the room, a round table held a small sealed chest pulsing faintly with the storm's familiar glow. A note lay on top. The town thrives on attention, care, and curiosity. Open the chest to discover the next spark of wonder. Clara lifted the chest, feeling warmth radiate from it. The moment she unlatched it, a soft, tinkling melody filled the cabin. Inside, dozens of tiny mechanical creatures, each no larger than a teacup, scurried to life, glowing faintly and moving with purpose. They looked like miniature animals, foxes, birds, rabbits all, animated by some gentle magic. Henry examined one. They're helpers, magical helpers. Perhaps. The storm is sending us assistance for the next stage. The children gasped, chasing the tiny creatures as they hopped and scuttled around the cabin. Some carried glowing fragments of paper, others small tools as if ready to help them complete tasks across the town. Clara realized that the storm's story had shifted. It was no longer just letters or figurines. It was a living, growing magic that needed attention and care to guide it. As they left the cabin, the tiny creatures darted ahead, leading them down a hidden path into the forest. There, a shallow clearing revealed a small, overgrown garden that had been neglected for decades. At the center, a broken fountain sat, moss-covered and dry. The note didn't mention this, Clara whispered, but the magic. It's showing us what needs fixing. Working together, the children cleaned the fountain while the tiny creatures carried enchanted seeds, planting them carefully around the clearing. Henry adjusted the crystal, letting its glow infuse the garden. Slowly, water began to trickle through the fountain, glowing faintly as it flowed. Flowers erupted in colors they had never seen before. This is incredible, Clara breathed. The storm's magic isn't just about helping people. It's about restoring life, forgotten places, and hidden beauty. The children cheered as they watched the flowers bloom and the fountain bubble with glowing water. Clara realized that Willowmere had become a canvas for the storm's magic, and every small act they performed would ripple across the town in ways no one could yet predict. As the sun dipped low behind the hills, casting long shadows over the restored garden, a gentle breeze carried faint laughter and whispers through the forest. Clara understood then that the adventure was far from over. The storm had left more mysteries, more tasks, and more magical surprises, and they were only just beginning to uncover them. As the twilight deepened, Clara and the children followed the tiny magical creatures deeper into the forest. The creatures' glowing forms lit a narrow path that wound between tall, ancient trees, their leaves shimmering with dew and faint sparks of light. At the heart of the forest, they came upon a small, circular clearing encircled by stones etched with runes. In the center, a pedestal held a small, unmarked book bound in soft, silver leather. The crystal in Clara's pocket pulsed warmly, pointing toward it. Clara lifted the book. As soon as her fingers touched it, the pages fluttered open on their own, revealing illustrations that moved like living pictures. A bird building a nest, a baker kneading dough, children planting seeds in a hidden garden. Each scene glowed faintly, and a soft melodic hum filled the air. Henry leaned closer. It's recording the town. Every act of care, every small moment of magic, it's all here. A whisper drifted from the trees. This book remembers what others forget. Protect it, guide it, and it will show you what the town truly needs. The children crowded around, mesmerized. One reached out, and a tiny image of a stray cat curled up on the page, stretching and purring as if alive. Another page showed the fox leading them to the hidden cabin the night before. Clara realized that the storm's magic had evolved once again. It wasn't just sending tasks or objects, it was now giving them a map of the town's hidden wonders and needs. A guide to the subtle magic woven into everyday life. Suddenly, one of the creatures darted forward, carrying a small envelope that glimmered differently from the rest. Clara opened it carefully. Inside was a note. Follow the song of the river. Where water and light meet, a forgotten story waits to be heard. Henry furrowed his brow. A forgotten story. That sounds important. They followed the tiny glowing creatures to the river's edge, where the water glimmered under the moonlight. They're partially hidden beneath reeds. They found a small wooden boat tied to a stone. Inside, a bundle of letters from decades past floated on cushions of glowing moss. Clara picked one up and began reading. It was a letter never delivered, a message of hope and reconciliation written by someone who had left Willowmere long ago. The crystal pulsed as if approving, and the children listened intently, holding the tiny glowing figurines that had guided them through the garden earlier. As each letter was read aloud, faint images rose from the river, showing the events described, reunions, long-lost friendships, and the rekindling of forgotten bonds. The magic of the storm was not just in creating wonder writ, was in healing the unseen fractures in Willowmere. By the time the last letter was read, the river shimmered brightly, reflecting the moon and stars like a mirror. The forest around them seemed to hum with life, the fox appearing once again as if nodding in approval. Clara tucked the letter safely into the silver book. "The storm keeps giving us more," she said softly. "Every day there's a new story to find, a new place to restore." The children yawned but smiled, their minds alight with visions of glowing rivers, magical gardens, and tiny creatures guiding them. Henry chuckled. "Tomorrow, we'll follow the next thread. The town is full of stories waiting to be noticed." And as they walked back toward Willowmere, a faint glimmer of magic lingered in the air. A promise that the adventure and the quiet miracles it carried was far from over. By the time Clara, Henry, and the children returned to Willowmere, the rain had softened to a misty drizzle. The bakery windows glowed warmly, and the scent of bread and cinnamon spilled out into the night. Inside, Mr. Alcott had kept the ovens burning, filling the shelves with golden loaves and trays of sweet rolls. Clara placed the silver book on the counter beside the now quiet crystal. Both seemed to settle, no longer glowing, but their presence filled the room with a quiet comfort. She knew the storm's magic had done its work. It had not disappeared, it had rooted itself into the lives of the town. The children gathered by the fire, their heads nodding with sleep. Henry leaned against the counter, watching them with a smile. "It feels different now, doesn't it? Like the whole town is breathing easier." Clara nodded. The letters, the gardens, the river, the book. They weren't just tasks, they were reminders. The storm wanted us to see what was already here, the kindness, the stories, the connections. The fox appeared one last time at the doorway, eyes shining in the lamplight. For a moment, it seemed to bow, then slipped away into the night, leaving only paw prints that shimmered briefly before vanishing. Clara closed her notebook and whispered, "Thank you," not sure if she spoke to the storm, the town, or the magic itself. As the last raindrops faded, Willowmere was left washed clean and peaceful. The townsfolk returned to their homes with lighter hearts. The bakery doors stayed open late for anyone who wanted warmth, and the river sang softly under the moon. That night, as Clara drifted to sleep in her little room above the Copper Kettle Bakery, she felt a deep certainty. The magic of the storm would never truly end. It would live on in every loaf shared, every kind word spoken, every story remembered. And so, the Rainy Day Bakery remained, not just a shelter from storms, but a place where magic lingered in the air, waiting quietly for those who believed in it. The story closed, like the final page of a cherished book, but its warmth lingered long after, wrapping Willowmere. Anyone listening in the coziest of dreams?